Craig Breedlove, Speed on Wheels, Daredevils Lesson 7. As Craig Breedlove once said, you have to be careful which way you point because it will go there. He was talking about his car, Spirit of America. Well, it wasn't really a car. Certainly, it was nothing like the family Ford or Chevy. No, Breedlove's car was more like a jet plane on wheels. It was built for speed. Breedlove used it to see just how fast he could go. Ever since Craig Breedlove was a young boy, he had been obsessed with speed. In 1950, at the age of 13, he built his first hot rod. 4 years later, Breedlove took up car racing. He once crashed a friend's souped-up 1932 Chevy at 120 miles per hour. The crash threw Breedlove through the car's cloth roof. Somehow, he lived to tell the tale. Soon after that incident, Breedlove took up the challenge of pure speed. In 1961, he bought a surplus jet engine for $500. It became the engine for his first Spirit of America car. 2 years later, he drove the car to a new land speed mark of 407 miles per hour. The record didn't last long. That same year, Art Arfons, driving his green monster, went 434 miles per hour. Over the next several years, the two speedsters battled back and forth. First one would break the record and then the other. More than once, Breedlove flirted with disaster. In 1964, he flashed across the salt flats in Utah at 526 miles per hour. But going that fast was only half the challenge. Stopping was the other half. Cars that go this fast need parachutes to slow them down. But this time, as he tried to slow down, Breedlove lost both his parachutes. He also burned out his brakes. The car roared past the braking area and smashed through a telephone pole. The power company later sent him a bill for $200. The car then flew through the air and landed nose first in an 18-foot deep pond. In danger of drowning, Breedlove managed to scramble out of the car. He then swam to shore unhurt. A few days later, Arfons set a new world record. Breedlove came back the next year with an all-new Spirit of America. He set a higher record with a speed of 555 miles per hour. The stubborn Arfons then took the lead again with an awesome 576 miles per hour. But Breedlove did him one better. He became the first man in history to go 600 miles per hour on land. Art Arfons could never beat that mark, but others did. Gary Gablick went 622 miles per hour in his Blue Flame rocket car. Then, in 1983, his record was broken by an Englishman named Richard Noble. Noble's new world mark was 633 miles per hour. By this time, Breedlove had gone on to other activities. He had lost his sponsor, Goodyear Tires, and had given up his quest to hold the land speed record. For a few years, he switched to quarter-mile drag racing. In this field, too, he set new speed records. And again, he cheated death. He once flipped his dragster at 420 miles per hour and walked away. At last, in 1976, he quit. It seemed that his racing days were over. But Breedlove's desire for pure speed never left him. In 1993, he was back on the track. He was now in his late 50s. He had more cash, having made money selling real estate. Also, Breedlove had a new sponsor, Shell Oil. He returned to racing with 3 goals in mind. First, he thought, he would break Noble's speed record, which still stood at 633 miles per hour. Next, he would become the first racer to top 700-mile mark. Finally, he would break the 760-mile-per-hour sound barrier. As before, there were not many rules for Breedlove to worry about. In this sport, there aren't limits to the size, shape, or power of the car. To set a new mark, however, a couple of standards must be met. The car must race through a measured mile speed trap, where the speed is measured. The car must then be turned around and raced back through the speed trap the other direction. This eliminates tailwind as a factor in the car's speed. Both runs must be made within 1 hour. The official speed is based on the average of the 2 runs. Rocket power cars, such as Breedlove's, need about 6 miles to reach top speed. Then they need another 6 miles to slow down. To be on the safe side, 2 more miles are added to each end of the course. There are only a few places on Earth that are suited for such speeds. The best place is the flat, barren, Black Rock Desert in Nevada. By 1996, Breedlove had a new Spirit of America car. The gleaming white vehicle was 44 feet long with an engine that came from a U.S. Navy Phantom jet fighter. Normally, such an engine produces 17,000 pounds of thrust. Breedlove made it even more powerful. When he was finished, it could generate 22,650 pounds of thrust. That's about the same as 45,000 horsepower. In comparison, a typical car has about 140 horsepower. The shape of the car had to be carefully planned. That's because when it approaches the sound barrier, a car creates shock waves. Such waves, said one design expert, are so powerful they can flatten wood frame buildings. The design had to deflect those shock waves up and away from the car. On October 28, 1996, the 59-year-old Breedlove was ready. He squeezed into the cockpit. Despite the car's length, there wasn't much room for the driver. The Spirit of America was mostly fuel and engine. At first, everything went well. When the car hit the speed trap, it zoomed up to 675 miles per hour. Then, in an instant, something went wrong. Strong crosswinds hit the car and shock waves began to buffet the cockpit. Breedlove knew he had to stop, so he quickly hit the kill switch. But he was going far too fast. The car flipped onto its side, careened across the desert, making a broad U-turn. The Spirit of America barely missed a crowd of spectators who had come to watch. It almost smashed into a parked van. When it finally came to rest, the car was 2.7 miles off course. Luckily, however, no one was killed. Amazingly, Breedlove escaped serious injury. "It just got away from me, but I'm all right," he said. Still, it was a bitter disappointment. He had gone faster than Noble, but since the car was wrecked, he couldn't make the second run. Craig Breedlove would have to wait for another day. That day may never come. On September 26, 97, Andy Green raised the bar again. Driving Richard Noble's car, he set a new land record. His average for the two runs was 714 miles per hour. That broke Noble's old record by more than 80 miles per hour. A few weeks later, Green broke the sound barrier by driving through the speed trap at 762 miles per hour. His feat did not become an official record because he was a minute late making the return trip. Still, Green had done what Breedlove had always hoped to do. It was hard for Breedlove to see Green succeed where he had failed, but Breedlove could look back on a career of many accomplishments. After all, he had been the first to go 400, he had also been the first to go 500 and 600 miles per hour. So while he would not be the first to go faster than 700, he would long be remembered as a giant in land speed racing.